When doctor saw my wife's ultrasound, he shacked and begged me to div. The first time I realized something was wrong, it wasn't the ultrasound. It wasn't even the way the doctor's eyes darted between the screen and my wife, as if searching for a secret coded into her bones. It was the phone, a little unlocked rectangle of glass and temptation sitting on the armrest of our car as we drove to the hospital. That phone would later expose logistics for a months-long affair, unraveling my life thread by thread. I should have known from the way the air felt in the car that morning. It was prickly, too much silence, too many words unsaid. She was staring out the window, one hand absently curled around her growing belly, her thumb tapping a rhythm against her thigh. I tried to make a joke about the baby kicking a future soccer star, but she smiled with half her mouth, the other half still somewhere else. Every minute ticked by with a quiet tension. The appointment was at 9:30 a.m. I watched the minutes crawl on the dashboard and tried to ignore the ache in my chest. We were having a baby. I should have felt happy, and I tried. God, I tried. But something was off, and I couldn't name it. The hospital parking lot was full, but I found a spot near the entrance and killed the engine. She didn't move for a second, just stared at the building. I waited, hoping she'd say something. Instead, she reached for her purse, and the phone fell to the floor. The screen lit up. A message popped up. I saw 2 words, "Miss you," before she snatched it up, cheeks flushed. "Ready?" she said, voice brittle. I nodded, swallowing the questions. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed and the air smelled like antiseptic and baby powder. The waiting room was packed. A toddler was screaming somewhere, an old man coughed, but my world narrowed to my wife and her phone. She kept glancing at it, fingers twitching. I tried not to notice, tried to convince myself it was nerves, nothing more. The nurse called us in. My heart hammered as we followed her down the corridor, past posters of smiling babies and warnings about prenatal vitamins. My wife gripped my hand, her palm sweaty. In the exam room, the ultrasound machine glowed blue. The doctor, Dr. Patel, smiled warmly. "Let's take a look at your little one," he said. Gel smeared over her stomach, cold and viscous. The doctor pressed the wand gently, eyes on the screen. The baby flickered into view, a blur of limbs and promise. I held my breath, searching for anything wrong. Dr. Patel's smile faded. He squinted, then leaned closer, his face inches from the monitor. He muttered something I didn't catch. My wife tensed. The doctor glanced at her, then at me, his eyes shadowed with something I didn't understand. "Excuse me," he said, abruptly, standing. He left the room, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. My wife's hand flew to her mouth. "What's wrong?" I whispered. She shook her head, tears brimming. "Nothing. I don't know." I reached for her, but she pulled away. The silence swallowed us. The doctor returned, another nurse trailing him. "I just want to take a few additional images," he said, his voice strained. He repeated the scan, the nurse watching the screen, face pale. Finally, Dr. Patel turned to me. "Can I speak to you privately for a moment?" My stomach dropped. My wife squeezed her eyes shut. I followed him into the hallway, where he leaned against the wall, rubbing his temples. "Mr. Turner," he said quietly, "there's something unusual in the scan. The gestational age doesn't match the date on your wife's file. It's off by several weeks." I stared at him, brain scrambling. "What does that mean?" He hesitated. "I think you should talk to your wife, and I strongly recommend you do so today." That was the moment everything began to unravel. We drove home in silence. She stared at her phone, unlocking it with trembling fingers. The screen glowed. She typed, erased, typed again. I forced myself not to look, but every nerve in my body screamed at me to snatch the phone and demand answers. At home, she went straight to the bedroom and shut the door. I stood in the hallway, knuckles white around my keys. The echo of the doctor's words pulsed in my head. Off by several weeks. Talk to your wife. Today. I paced the kitchen, thoughts racing. The ultrasound had thrown our timeline into chaos. Our baby wasn't conceived when I thought. So, who? My heart lurched. I tried to breathe, but my chest was tight, strangled by suspicion. I needed answers, but I was scared of what I'd find. As dusk fell, she emerged. Face blotchy, eyes rimmed red. She stood at the edge of the kitchen, phone clutched in her fist. "I need to tell you something," she whispered. I braced myself. "There's someone else," she said, voice cracking. "It started months ago. I'm so sorry." The words hit me like a car crash. My world tilted, the floor dissolved beneath me. I wanted to scream, to smash something, but all I could do was stare at her, at the phone in her hand, the phone that had orchestrated it all. The logistics, the meetups, the secret messages. Unlocked, exposed, damning. "How long?" I croaked. 5 months, she said, tears spilling. "It's over, I swear. But the baby, I don't know." I staggered back, hands pressed to my face. 5 months. The timeline matched the discrepancy in the ultrasound. Our child, my child, suddenly uncertain. I grabbed her phone and scrolled through the messages, my fingers shaking. The evidence was everywhere. Dates, times, meeting places. The affair mapped out in cold digital ink. I felt sick. "You lied," I whispered. "Every day, you lied." She collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was lonely. You were always working. I needed someone." I pressed the heel of my hand to my forehead, trying to steady myself. The urge to run was overwhelming, but I stayed, anchored by pain and disbelief. The next days blurred together. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him, some faceless man who'd taken what was mine. The baby, growing inside her, was suddenly a question mark. We went back to the doctor. Dr. Patel was somber, professional. He explained the medical facts, the likelihoods, the uncertainties. Genetic testing could confirm paternity, but it would take time. My wife sat rigid, her hands clenched in her lap. Afterwards, I wandered the streets, lost. I thought about our life, our wedding, our plans, the nights we'd spent dreaming about the future. It all felt distant, corroded by betrayal. Every interaction was a minefield. I wanted to forgive her, to fix things, but the wounds were raw. Every time her phone buzzed, I flinched. Trust was gone, replaced by suspicion. She tried to explain, to apologize, but nothing made sense. The affair logistics, exposed by her unlocked phone, haunted me. She'd planned it all, right under my nose. I confronted her again and again, desperate for answers. Who was he? Why him? What did he have that I didn't? She told me bits and pieces, never enough. The secrecy, the lies, it was all too much. I started to keep a journal, scribbling my anger, my confusion. I found myself replaying every moment, searching for clues I'd missed. The way she'd smiled at her texts, the late-night calls, the sudden need for privacy. It was all there, hiding in plain sight. One night, I found her crying in the bathroom. She looked up at me, eyes hollow. "I ruined everything," she said. I wanted to comfort her, but I couldn't. I was broken too. The genetic test results came back. Our child was mine. Relief flooded me, but it was tainted, spoiled by everything that had happened. We tried to rebuild. Therapy sessions, awkward dinners, forced intimacy. Sometimes I caught a glimpse of the woman I'd married, but mostly I saw a stranger. She was haunted, ashamed, desperate to make amends. I was angry, bitter, lost, but I wanted to heal, for our child, for myself. Months passed. The baby was born, a perfect little girl, pink and wailing. I held her, tears streaming down my face. She was mine, but our family was fractured. We kept fighting, kept trying. Some days were better, some worse. The affair cast a long shadow, but we refused to let it define us. One evening, as the sun set, my wife sat beside me, our daughter asleep in her arms. She looked at me, eyes full of regret and hope. "I love you," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." I didn't know what the future would hold. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her completely. But for the first time, for months, I realized I wanted to try. Not just for the sake of our daughter, but for myself, to see if healing was possible, or if the cracks would always show. The day after her confession, I woke up before dawn, unable to sleep. The house was quiet, except for our baby's soft breathing. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, thinking of the man she'd been with. Did he know about the baby? Did he think she was his? Did he care at all? Or was he just another shadow in her phone? I wanted answers, desperately. But I also dreaded what those answers might do. I thought about the unlocked phone, the months of logistics laid bare, the times and places, the words exchanged when I was at work or asleep. I knew I could scroll through it all, torture myself, but I resisted. I didn't want to feed the poison any further. That morning, as I made coffee, the doorbell rang. It was my brother, Mark. He'd heard something was wrong. Word travels fast in families, even when you think you've kept it quiet. He looked at me, eyes sharp, and I wanted to break down right there. Instead, I told him everything, the ultrasound, the texts, the truth. Mark was silent for a long time. Then he said, "You need to decide what you want, not what everyone expects. You don't owe anyone forgiveness, but you can choose it if you want." His words hung in the air. I nodded, feeling the weight of choice pressing down on me. The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits, sleepless nights, and awkward silences. My wife tried her best, cooking meals, apologizing, crying into her pillow when she thought I couldn't hear. One evening, I found her in the nursery, rocking our daughter and humming a lullaby. She looked up, eyes red-rimmed, and whispered, "I wish I could take it back. I wish I could erase every mistake." I sat beside her. The ache in my chest was constant, but I wanted to believe her. "We can't erase it," I said, voice thick. "We can only move forward. But I need you to be honest, completely." She nodded, tears spilling over. "Ask me anything. I won't hide anymore." So I did. I asked about the affair, the man, their conversations, the guilt. She answered, sometimes haltingly, sometimes with relief, as if each truth set her a little freer. The hardest part was learning how ordinary it had all been. No grand passion, just stolen hours, bored texts, the thrill of secrecy. It made the betrayal worse somehow. We started therapy. Our counselor, Dr. Ellis, specialized in couples shattered by infidelity. The sessions were raw and brutal. Dr. Ellis didn't let us dodge, didn't let us gloss over pain. He asked hard questions, forced us to sit with our discomfort. At first, I hated every minute. But as weeks went by, the sessions became bearable, even helpful. Dr. Ellis taught us to listen, to speak honestly, to grieve what we'd lost. One session, he said, "You're not rebuilding the old relationship. You're building something new from broken pieces. It will never be what it was, but it can be strong in different ways." I clung to that idea. Maybe we could find beauty in the ashes. My wife kept her promise. She showed me every message, every lingering photo. She deleted the man's number, blocked him on every platform. She even wrote him a letter, no contact, no drama, just stating that she was recommitting to her family and that they would never speak again. I read the letter, hand trembling. It was simple and final. I felt something shift inside me, a small, cautious hope. The logistics of the affair, mapped out in her phone, haunted me. I saw where she'd lied, where she'd made excuses to go out. But the more I studied it, the more I realized how little it mattered now. The past was fixed, but the future was unwritten. A month after our daughter was born, we went for a walk in the park, a family outing, just the three of us. My wife pushed the stroller, her face pale and tired. I watched her, searching for the woman I'd loved, the woman I'd lost. "Do you ever think we'll be okay?" she asked quietly. I thought for a long moment. "I don't know, but I want to try." She reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. The next challenge was telling our families. My parents had always adored her, and I dreaded their disappointment. We invited them over one evening, sitting awkwardly in the living room. My wife spoke first, her voice steady but strained. "I made a mistake, a terrible one. I hurt your son. I'm so sorry." My mother cried. My father was silent. The room felt heavy with grief and anger. But they didn't turn away. They held our baby, rocked her gently, and promised to support us, whatever we decided. Later, my mother took me aside. "People survive worse," she whispered. "If you love her, fight for her. If you can't, that's okay too." I didn't know what I wanted, only that I couldn't make the decision yet. As weeks turned into months, the pain dulled, just enough for daily life to resume. We started to laugh again, sometimes, at silly things our daughter did. We went on awkward dates, learning how to be together in this new reality. But trust was a fragile thing. I still checked her phone sometimes, not because I suspected her, but because I needed reassurance. I hated that part of myself, but I couldn't stop. Therapy helped. Dr. Ellis focused on trust, on rebuilding the foundation brick by brick. He told us, transparency is key. Secrets kill relationships. We set new rules, no hidden passwords, no private conversations. She agreed, never hesitating. Slowly, I began to heal. I found myself wanting to touch her, to hold her hand, to kiss her goodnight. The first time I reached for her, she cried, soft, silent tears of relief. "I thought you'd never want me again," she whispered. "I'm trying," I said, and I meant it. One day, she suggested we write letters to each other, honest, unfiltered letters about what we felt and what we feared. I spent hours crafting mine, pouring out my anger, my sorrow, my hope. She wrote hers late at night, curled up on our bed, pen moving steadily. We exchanged them over breakfast. I read her words, raw and vulnerable, and something in me softened. She had suffered too. Guilt, shame, fear. She wanted forgiveness, but she didn't expect it. She just wanted a chance. We started to dream again. We talked about traveling, about buying a new house, about giving our daughter a sibling someday. The future felt possible, if uncertain. But triggers were everywhere. A song on the radio, a missed call, a late meeting. Sometimes I lashed out, unable to contain my anger. Sometimes she withdrew, sinking into guilt. We learned to name these moments, to talk about them instead of letting them fester. One night, she admitted, "I still hate myself for what I did. I don't know how to stop." I looked at her, broken and honest. "You have to forgive yourself too, or we'll never be free." She nodded, tears spilling over. It was a slow process, months, years maybe, but we kept trying. We found community in unexpected places, therapy groups, online forums, other couples who'd survived infidelity. Their stories gave us hope, reminded us we weren't alone. Some marriages ended, some healed, all changed. Our daughter grew, her laughter brightening the darkest days. She became the glue that held us together, her innocence a reminder of what mattered most. The man she'd been with tried to reach out, once. He sent a message, apologizing, asking if she was okay. She showed it to me immediately, hands shaking. Together, we deleted it, blocked him for good. It felt like closing a door. The seasons changed, and so did we. We celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, small victories. Each milestone was a testament to our resilience. One afternoon, I found my wife in the garden, planting flowers with our daughter. She looked up, sunlight catching her hair, and smiled, a real smile, full of hope. I realized I still loved her, despite everything. The love was different now, scarred, cautious, but real. We talked about forgiveness often. Dr. Ellis said, "Forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a journey. You'll choose it every day, or you won't." Some days I chose it. Some days I couldn't, but I kept trying. Eventually, forgiveness became less about her and more about me, letting go of anger, freeing myself from the past. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. We started new traditions: Friday movie nights, Sunday hikes, messy family dinners. We made memories, layer upon layer, until the old wounds began to fade. One evening, I sat with my wife on the porch, watching the stars. She leaned into me, her head on my shoulder. The crickets sang in the soft dusk, and the world felt, for a moment, peaceful. "I'm scared sometimes," she whispered, "that you'll never really trust me again." Her honesty startled me. I paused, feeling the old ache in my chest, the weight of the months behind us. "Some days I do," I admitted softly. "Some days I don't. But I want to. I want us to keep trying." She squeezed her hand. "Me too. I'll keep proving it, every single day." I believed her, or at least I wanted to. The rawness between us was different now, less like an open wound, more like a scar that still ached when the weather changed. We weren't who we had been, and we never would be again. Maybe that was okay. We started talking more openly about everything: the fears, the doubt, the hope. We learned to give each other space without pulling away. When old pain resurfaced, sometimes triggered by a song on the radio, a date on the calendar, or a look exchanged in a crowded room, we named it and sat with it together. We didn't run from it anymore. Therapy became part of our routine. The sessions were sometimes painful, unearthing truths we'd buried deep. But they also gave us tools, a language for our pain, and eventually our healing. Our therapist, Dr. Ellis, would remind us, "You can't unlive the past, but you can decide what you build from it now." Sometimes I hated hearing that, but it was true. Our daughter grew. She took her first steps between us, giggling as if she could sense she was helping us move forward. She became a bridge, reminding us of what we'd almost lost and what we still had. There were setbacks. I'd be lying if I said we never fought about the past again. Sometimes, when I was especially tired or stressed, the old suspicions would creep in. I'd catch myself watching her too closely, wondering if her phone buzzed a little too often. Each time, I'd have to choose trust or suspicion. One night, I found myself awake at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed everything: the doctor's shock, the ultrasound, the texts. I rolled over and looked at her sleeping face, peaceful in the blue shadows. I reminded myself that she was here, she'd chosen us, and she was doing the work. The next day, I told her about my sleepless night. She listened, took my hand, and said, "I know it'll take time. I'll wait for you as long as it takes." We made new memories. A weekend trip to the mountains where we hiked until our legs ached and our daughter squealed at the sight of chipmunks. A night at a jazz club where we laughed and danced like the world was brand new. Small things, but they mattered. There were moments of grace too. A letter she wrote me, pages and pages, confessing everything she'd felt, her shame, her love, her hope for our future. I read it beneath the old oak in our yard, tears blurring the ink. It was the most vulnerable thing she'd ever given me. Forgiveness was never a single moment. It was an accumulation, 1,000 small choices, a willingness to believe in the possibility of something better. Some days it felt possible, even easy. Other days it felt as distant as the moon. But we kept choosing each other. Intimacy returned, slowly. At first it was awkward, full of hesitation and unspoken questions. But as trust rebuilt, so did our physical connection. We learned to be patient, to laugh when things felt clumsy, to hold each other when one of us needed to stop and breathe. Sometimes, in the quiet after, she'd look at me with tears in her eyes and whisper, "Thank you for staying." And I'd whisper back, "Thank you for fighting for us." Our friends noticed the change. Some drifted away, unsure how to handle our new reality. Others drew closer, sharing their own stories of betrayal and redemption. We weren't alone, after all. We found a marriage counselor who specialized in infidelity recovery. At first, I dreaded those sessions, afraid of what might be unearthed, worried I'd hear something I couldn't forgive. But over time, I realized we needed those hard conversations. We needed to understand not just what had happened, but why. She spoke about her loneliness, about how she'd felt invisible, overwhelmed by motherhood, disconnected from me. I admitted how I'd retreated into work, using exhaustion as an excuse to avoid intimacy. We weren't blaming each other. We were seeing the cracks that had formed long before the affair. It didn't justify what she'd done, but it helped us understand. And understanding, Dr. Ellis said, was the first step toward healing. We made a pact, not just to avoid old mistakes, but to build something better. We set aside time each week, just for us. No talk of bills, no mention of the past, just laughter, dreams, and quiet moments. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, holding hands, grateful for the simple fact that we were still here. Our daughter's first birthday arrived. We threw a small party, just family and close friends. As I watched her smash cake with chubby fists, I felt a surge of gratitude. We'd survived. We were still a family. That night, after everyone left, my wife and I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by wrapping paper and balloons. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her. "We did it," she whispered. "Yeah," I said, "we did." But there was still more to do. The months that followed were a mix of progress and setbacks. Sometimes the pain returned unexpectedly. A scent, a memory, a stray comment. Each time we faced it together. We learned not to fear the hard days, but to see them as part of the process. One day, our daughter fell ill. Nothing serious, but enough to scare us. We spent the night in the ER, taking turns holding her, soothing her cries. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the past, not the pain, only our little girl and the family we'd built. When the crisis passed, we held each other, sobbing with relief. It was a reminder of what we'd almost lost and what we'd fought so hard to keep. We began to reach out to others, friends who were struggling, couples in crisis. We didn't offer advice, just a listening ear, a reminder that healing was possible. Sometimes that was enough. Our marriage wasn't perfect, it never would be. But it was real, messy, honest, hard-won. We'd given up the fantasy of happily ever after for something better, the daily choice to show up, to forgive, to love. There were moments of joy too, watching our daughter take her first steps, cheering her on at soccer games, dancing in the kitchen to old songs. These moments didn't erase the past, but they built a future. I started to see my wife differently, not just as the woman who'd hurt me, but as someone who was fighting every day to be better, to make amends, to love me well. And I saw myself too, scarred, but stronger, capable of forgiveness I never thought possible. We talked about the future. Another child maybe, a new house, dreams that felt fragile but real. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wake to find her watching me, eyes full of hope and fear. "Are we okay?" she'd whisper. And I'd smile, pull her close and say, "We're getting there." We celebrated our anniversary quietly. No grand gestures, just a quiet dinner at home, our daughter asleep upstairs. We looked through old photos, remembering the good times, acknowledging the hard ones. We toasted to survival, to forgiveness, to the messy, beautiful life we were building. Years passed. The affair became a distant memory, a chapter in our story, not the end, but a turning point. We'd been broken, but we'd rebuilt, stronger and wiser. Our daughter grew, her laughter filling our home. We told her when she was old enough to understand that love was hard work, that forgiveness was a gift we gave ourselves as much as others. She nodded, wise beyond her years. We kept going to therapy, even when things were good. We knew how easy it was to slip back into old patterns. We wanted to stay connected, to keep growing. One day, my wife surprised me with a letter. She'd written it years before, during the darkest days. She'd never meant to send it, but she wanted me to have it now. I read it, heart pounding. She wrote about her guilt, her fear, her love. She wrote about the moment she realized she wanted to fight for us, no matter the cost. She wrote about hope, a hope I thought we'd lost. I hugged her, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you," I whispered, "for not giving up." She smiled, wiping her own tears. "Thank you for giving me another chance." Our story wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was ours, honest, hard-fought, and real. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to our story. If you're struggling with trust, with pain, with the slow work of forgiveness, I want you to know you're not alone. The scars are real, but so is the chance to heal.
Even now, the echoes of betrayal sometimes surface. A passing phrase, a look exchanged across a crowded room, the sudden, unbidden memory of that day in the clinic, the doctor's face, the trembling in his voice, the phone glowing in my hand. I still remember the way the world seemed to tilt, how I gripped the edge of the ultrasound table to steady myself. That moment changed me. It changed us both. I've since learned that the body holds on to trauma. The mind, too. There were nights when my heart would race, when I'd wake up sweating, convinced something was wrong. Sure, I'd missed another sign, another secret waiting to shatter our new peace. Sometimes I'd find myself watching my wife too closely, reading too much into a sigh or a smile that wasn't for me. I'd second-guess myself, as if vigilance could protect me from future pain. I know now that's normal. The long shadow of betrayal can linger for years. We talked about it in therapy, my wife and I. The therapist explained how infidelity rewires trust, how it can leave you anxious, jumpy, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I saw it in myself, the way I braced every time her phone buzzed, the way I sometimes checked the locks twice before bed, as if I could keep loss at bay by sheer force of will. She told me she felt it too. Guilt that surfaced in unexpected moments. Shame that clung even on happy days. We were both learning to navigate a world that wasn't as safe as we'd once believed. But healing did come. Slowly, in fits and starts. There were setbacks, days when I wanted to retreat into myself, to wall off my heart and keep it safe. But there were good days too. Days filled with laughter, with the quiet comfort of ordinary life. Our daughter, growing ever more independent, became the center of our little universe. Her joy was contagious, her innocence somehow purifying. We clung to each other, building new memories atop the ruins of old ones.
There's something else I want to share, something I rarely admit, even to myself. Being cheated on changed not just my marriage, but my sense of self. Some days I felt less than, smaller, less worthy, as if I'd failed in some fundamental way. I struggled with self-doubt, with the gnawing suspicion that I wasn't enough. My wife did her best to reassure me, but I had to do the work of rebuilding my own self-esteem. I poured myself into fatherhood, into friendship, into rediscovering who I was beyond the confines of husband and partner. Friends asked, sometimes, why I stayed. Why fight for a relationship that had been so deeply wounded? I never really had a simple answer. Part of it was love, stubborn and enduring. Part was fear, of loss and of regret, of what might come after. But mostly it was hope. The hope that we could become something new, that we could forge a deeper, more honest connection. The hope that our daughter could grow up seeing that even broken things can be mended, that forgiveness is possible, even when it's hard. The research says the effects of infidelity can linger a lifetime. It can lead to anxiety, even physical health problems, migraine, insomnia, heartache in the truest sense. I believe that. I've felt it. But I also believe in resilience. I believe in the power of two people choosing again and again to show up, to listen, to try. I won't pretend we're perfect. There are still moments of doubt, still scars that ache in the cold. But we've learned to talk about it, to share our fears instead of hiding them. We check in often. Sometimes a simple, "Are you okay?" is enough to keep us steady. One night, after our daughter had gone to bed, my wife sat across from me, a mug of tea cradled in her hands. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought about it. I was honest. Sometimes. But then I remember how far we've come. I remember how much I still want this. Us. I'm not ready to give up.
She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Me neither. We sat in silence, the kind that feels full rather than empty. I realized then that our marriage wasn't defined by her mistake or my pain. It was defined by what we chose next, by the work we were willing to do, together. Sometimes I catch her watching me, a look of quiet gratitude in her eyes. Sometimes I reach for her hand and she squeezes back, strong and sure. Our life isn't what I once imagined, but it's real, messy, beautiful, and ours. If you're listening, if you've survived betrayal or heartbreak, know this: you can heal. You can choose to stay or to go, to forgive or to move on. There's no right answer, only the truth of your own heart. For us, the truth was simple. We still loved each other. That love was battered, imperfect, but it was enough. Thank you for listening to our story. If you felt something, if you saw yourself in these words, I hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. Your stories matter too. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment and hit like. It really helps the channel. And subscribe for more true stories.